The NHL is full of stars, but not all stars are created equal. Some players are paid like superstars, treated like franchise cornerstones, or hyped up for viral highlights. Yet their impact on the ice doesn't measure up.
1-0 lead.
These are the three types of overrated players we're breaking down today. The big contract that weighs down a team, the flashy young talent more famous online than on the stat sheet, and the veteran whose sudden fall-off caught everyone by surprise. When big contracts become bigger problems. When big contracts don't deliver, the impact goes far beyond the ice. In Edmonton, Darnell Nurse is at the center of this conversation. The Oilers locked him into a high-dollar, long-term deal that signaled he would be their top defenseman, the cornerstone who could balance the firepower of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl with steady shutdown play. That kind of commitment raised expectations to franchise player levels. But the frustration comes when the performance doesn't consistently meet those expectations. Nurse has been criticized for defensive lapses in critical moments, giveaways at the blue line, missed coverages around the net, and costly positioning mistakes under playoff pressure. In games where Edmonton needed stability at the back end, those breakdowns stood out, especially because they directly undercut the team's push for deeper playoff success. It's not that Nurse has no value. He plays massive minutes, leans into physical matchups, and usually gets the toughest assignments against the elite forwards. The problem comes when fans and analysts stack that effort against the size of his cap hit. At a time when every dollar matters for a team who's chasing the Stanley Cup, his deal limits the Oilers' roster flexibility. Depth moves are harder to make when so much space is tied up in a player whose impact isn't consistently at the level of the game's true elite defenseman. That gap between expectation and reality is what fuels the debate. Supporters point to his endurance and toughness, while critics see a defender who's sometimes overextended and doesn't always deliver the composure his role demands. The truth lies in between. He's not a liability, but he doesn't separate himself as the kind of elite shutdown option his pay would suggest. And while fans in Edmonton debate the weight of a contract, another case of hype looks completely different. It's not about money, it's about a player more celebrated for viral highlights than consistent results on the scoreboard. From human highlight reel to locker room debate. Trevor Zegras has become one of the NHL's most polarizing young names, and for good reason. He's the league's go-to source for jaw-dropping highlights, the player who turns a routine night into a viral clip with a lacrosse-style goal or no-look setup. In an entertainment-driven league, his creativity is impossible to ignore. But the bigger question becomes what those highlights really mean when it comes to consistent full-ice impact. Zegras is the NHL's highlight reel poster child, but highlight plays don't always equal reliable 200-foot value. That tension is what makes him such a debated figure. While he's constantly featured in commercials and league promotions, not everyone inside the league sees him as an untouchable star. In fact, there's been plenty of chatter, both in player conversations and in some polls. That labels him as overrated. That perspective matters because it's not just fans or media floating the idea, it's voices in NHL locker rooms. And when you line up the storylines next to their production, the contrast becomes more clear. Zegras shows flashes of brilliance, but the consistency isn't always there. His defensive play is still developing, and he can get caught struggling in the harder areas of the ice where winning shifts are ground out. His overall numbers have bounced from year to year, and while he does put up points, it hasn't always been enough to lift Anaheim much higher in the standings. If he were already the complete game-changing center the Ducks are searching for, they likely wouldn't be stuck battling near the bottom as often as they are now. And here's what keeps the debate alive. The ceiling is still obvious. At just 23 years old, he has the skill set and hockey sense to grow into a more complete impact player. He's young, and the upside is real, just not guaranteed yet. For now, his reputation rests more on the dazzling moments than on a steady influence shift after shift, which is exactly why peers and fans alike question whether his image outpaces his results. And if Zegras represents hype that hasn't fully matured, our final case highlights a different kind of overrated status, when a proven elite suddenly drops off, leaving everyone wondering what happened. When elite production vanishes overnight. What happens when a player who once carried an offense suddenly struggles to make an impact? That's been the storyline around Jonathan Huberdeau. Not long ago, he was coming off a career-best season in Florida, driving their attack with elite playmaking and ranking amongst the league's top scorers. His vision and passing had made him one of the most effective setup men in hockey, and the Panthers leaned on him heavily to power their offense. But then came the trade to Calgary, followed by a major long-term deal which would position him as the new face of the Flames. Expectations were enormous and built on the belief that his Florida-level production would carry over without issue. But instead, the numbers fell sharply once he arrived in Calgary. The dynamic passing and high assist totals he was known for turned into long stretches of quiet play. 5-on-5 production would slip. Power play impact declined, and his ability to consistently generate scoring chances didn't resemble the player that fans had just seen in Florida. Pretty much overnight, the perception around him had changed from centerpiece to major question mark. And for a signing that was meant to stabilize the direction of the franchise, the results became opposite. Fans and analysts began pointing out the gap between what was promised and what was actually delivered. Criticism grew quickly. Some commenters and fans went as far as saying the Flames had taken on one of the toughest contracts in the league, especially given how important cap space is in today's NHL. With so much invested in a single player, Calgary's ability to add depth pieces or pivot the roster became much more restricted. That type of pressure only magnified his struggles on the ice, as every quiet night drew more attention. There are explanations to consider: a new system under different coaches, line mates that didn't click, or simply the adjustment of moving to a new market, all likely played a role. But whatever the root cause, one fact remains: his production and his paycheck no longer line up. And that mismatch makes his situation stand out as one of the most clear examples of how quickly a superstar can be judged overrated. It shows the other side of the debate, where expectations, contracts, and reality collide, and sets the stage for an even bigger question about what truly defines an overrated player in today's NHL. So there you have it, 3 different ways a player can end up being called overrated. For Darnell Nurse, it's the weight of a massive contract compared to his performance night to night. For Trevor Zegras, it's the highlights and skill outshining the overall 200-foot game. And for Jonathan Huberdeau, it's the sudden drop-off after once looking like a franchise-level scorer. Reputation and results don't always line up, and that's what makes the debate so constant in hockey. But what other players do you think are overrated in the NHL right now? Be sure to let me know about it in the comments below. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.